Welcome to this week's edition of Break the Bank. I'm Jeff DeForest, and let me count the people here on the show. We got me, we got you. We're waiting on Frankie G, and Frankie G's having internet problems. Wow, internet crap out. It's kind of like back in the day when cell phones first became very much in vogue. I was doing sports talk radio, and your biggest fear was cell phone crap out. You would have an interview going with Pat Riley. All of a sudden, he would go into some tunnel somewhere, and in spite of the fact that he was spewing out and espousing nothing but brilliance. So all of a sudden you were getting static. Then a pigeon would take a crap and the station would go off the air. And cell phone crap out was always a disastrous condition that you had to deal with. And internet crap out is just as bad. Frankie G said he studied for 4 hours. He had gone to various forms of therapy to help him calm his nerves and soothe all of the anxiety that he had. He had a little bit of stage fright there when he first started doing the show. You guys might have recognized that. He even admitted to it. He was schwitzing and all kinds of crazy things were going on. Then he started to pick winner after winner after winner. He had that big week out there at Del Mar a couple of weeks ago. Stayed after the Breeders' Cup was over. Crushed him like a grape. Was winning money hand over fist, I'm sure. And I wanted to talk to him about celebrating one of my favorite racetracks to bet is Tampa Bay Downs open up today, celebrating their 100th year. Can't believe they opened up originally in 1925. So this is their 100th season. I had some experience there when I used to do the daily horse racing review show on Sunshine Network, now known as FanDuel TV. First came into existence here. That was the first regional cable system. It might have been Sports Channel before that. But my MO as a professional was always to latch on to the new thing. Before they discovered that I didn't really have any talent, I was able to score a lot of jobs, Mike Jones, and I started doing a horse racing review show on Sunshine Network. We had to spend a couple of seasons at Tampa Bay Downs. Enjoyed it immensely. Big exacta track. If you can get by the favorite there, it's like a couple of other places around the country and even out of the country. Woodbine is like that. If you get past the favorite, big fat overlay payoffs on all of the exactas. Tampa Bay is like that. They have horses coming in from all over the place, so it's really fascinating in the beginning. And sure enough, Frankie G, I'm thinking. See, I don't know. Do you think he really had internet crap out, or he just didn't want to turn himself away from the late Big Four? What do you think, Mike? How are you, my friend?
I'm good. I'm good. Great to be here with Jeff. Great to be here on Bleacher Brothers. Yeah, I don't know. Could he be out partying, celebrating another big win? Who knows? Had the Miami in the under, teased, parlayed, and everything else. It was two free picks last week. We were winners, so who knows? Wouldn't put it past my boy Frankie G to do all that. That's for sure.
Yeah, we're going to miss him, but we're going to try and do our best to compensate for that. Many issues to discuss, and of course, we'll follow the same format that we had slated if Frankie G was with us. I don't know, maybe he can text us his picks, and we'll be able to get that in since he did all of his homework for the show. I'm going to try and send him a message during the break and say, hey, who was it that you were going to select? So we do have the three community games that we picked out, and then we'll have two free elective games. You and I will both dabble into a couple of freebie picks. I hit both of mine last week, but lost the other three. So I'm sitting here at 2-3, and I think back-to-back losing weeks, especially after that. You gave me a little bit of a break there and took the big fat round number, the 0 out of the 0-5 with that FAU pick. And I'm right back with one of my free selections, picking the FAU game against UConn this week. But you took one of the toughest beats. We're always asking people, hey, what was the toughest beat that you ever suffered? There are a lot of great stories about that. You took one of the toughest beats I think I've witnessed, and it ended up with a lot of acrimony, and it involved North Carolina, one of the games that's going to be part of our community selections this week, North Carolina and Duke. But this was North Carolina and Wake Forest. And you were sitting there ready to cash a ticket. Had you already told the wife, "Hey, look, I got to go back out to the Hard Rock and cash a ticket"? And what happened? What was the scenario?
So the under 38 was the play in the Wake Forest North Carolina game. The score is 21-12 with 5.5 minutes to go, and there's some penalty or something that happens where North Carolina gets in a 3rd and 18 from their own 9-yard line. They throw an incomplete pass, so you think, oh, they're going to go for it. The game's going to get over, and they go from the 8-yard line. Instead, Bill Belichick punts. Basically down 9, 5.5 minutes to go, even though it's a 3rd and 18 on your own 10, you're waving the white flag in that case, especially as an NFL coach going out. We've always heard this, that we're on the, we're done. They punt the ball. Wake Forest gets it at the 45. On first down, Belichick uses his second timeout, so he has one remaining. And on third down, they get a first down. So now there's under 3 minutes to go, and they get a first down. They're moving the ball inside the 30 of North Carolina. And then on the first down play, they run the ball like 2:15 to go and get it all the way to the 7-yard line. The kid makes a touchdown saving tackle out of bounds. But since, unlike the NFL where the clock stops under 5 minutes, it only stops under 2 minutes. So we run it down to the 2-minute warning. Belichick hasn't been using the timeout. So I'm like, oh, I won. Wake's going to take a knee. They're not going to score. That's it. Well, unlike most NFL teams that do it, Wake decides to put in their backups, although they do have their starting running back in at that time. And they decide to run the ball on first down. So you figure Belichick's going to use the timeout now. He doesn't. They get 2 yards to the 5-yard line. Clock's running down. They get under 1:15 to go. They run the ball on second down. They get to the 3. So I'm like, why is this guy not taking a knee? So on third down, I'm like, he's going to run another play. I'm like, I'm going nuts. Like, what is he doing? And then sure enough, he runs and they stop him for no gain. So I'm like, I'm out of this. And all of a sudden I see the clock stop. I'm like, why is the clock stop? There's no penalty. And then the announcers say, Bill Belichick just called timeout. I'm like, what? What's he doing the timeout for now? And evidently he made him run a fourth down play, and they run actually not even into the line. They run a quarterback wide run, and he hits the pylon, and I lose. And I'm like, that's the darnest thing that I've seen. Why would he wait till 25 seconds down 9? It's not like it's a 6-point game and you have a chance. You're down 9. And then I saw what happened was the coach of Wake Forest took his hat off as he went to midfield to give Bill Belichick his respect, which very rarely you see a coach take his hat off to show that respect. And Belichick slapped his hand and went the other way. And I said, that's something that you don't usually see. Belichick was mad. He probably called timeout to make him run another play to see what he would do if he was going to take a knee, give up possession of the ball just because he was annoyed. And I think that's the difference in the NFL. Coaches in the NFL will always take a knee, but in college, you have backups that want to play. Kids want to score a touchdown. They want to excite the crowd. The parents are there and all that. So you always different motivation. I think in college, and I see Ohio State does it all the time. You think they're going to take a knee and they run out, put their backups in and run up the score. So, but in this case, it was just unfortunate, but I thought this was interesting. So I look forward to the Wake Forest, North Carolina game next year to see what goes on. But importantly, we're going to pick that game today. So I'll have something to say when it comes down to that.
Yeah, we got Duke and North Carolina. You texted me when I sent you the games that we were going to do collectively, and they said basketball. I'm like, no. Your football schools. What are you talking about? Duke and North Carolina basketball will be a tougher prediction, and actually be a real, as my good friend Al Bernstein used to say about a guy who was stepping into the ring for his pro debut in a 4-rounder preliminary early on the card on those ESPN shows he was doing many years ago. This is an intriguing matchup, and there is some intrigue to this matchup. I was kind of torn as to which way to go, and I guess the magic question with that game is if you were doing one of those grids, who has the edge, and you were going to check the boxes, it's kind of weird to think that you might even be inclined to check Manny Diaz having a coaching edge over Bill Belichick, which if you said that a few years ago,
Right.
Belichick was with the Patriots and Manny Diaz was failing as a coach with the University of Miami, that would be a laughable question, but it actually is somewhat legitimate with these two guys now on the college level. I got lucky to cover a point spread in one of my elective games, or I would have been 1-4, but this is one of those victories that you can't feel any great pride in because by all accounts and by all rationale, the game should have been hopelessly lost. The Miami Dolphins in that Madrid game were laying 2.5 to the Washington Commanders. Commanders badly compromised. Marcus Mariota gets injured in the ball game. I respect the fact he's been in the league for as long as he has. You would have to say that production to if you were going to look at where he was drafted and expectations for him, he certainly hasn't measured up there. But I don't know. Is he kind of the Darko Milicic in terms of draft position versus career in the National Football League? Darko, of course, taken number 2 in that draft, which remarkably, if you look back on that, LeBron James still playing 23 years later. Everybody else is out of the league forever, including Darko, who did play like 14 years. He hung around for a long time, but you would have to say that, one of the worst draft picks ever in that position, considering who was selected afterwards, Carmelo, then Chris Bosh, and then, of course, Dwayne Wade, all franchise makers and eventual champions, although Carmelo never won an NBA championship, but still had what you would have to consider a Hall of Fame career. Everybody would say that except Phil Jackson. But Darko, in spite of the fact that he was ridiculed and caused the Detroit Pistons franchise great grief for making that selection. That's a kind of blunder that can turn a franchise's fortunes around. Still, at least he hung around a long time. That's where Mariota is. But here he is. He's injured in this ball game. Mike McDaniel under fire, been on the hot seat. He finally won a game against the Buffalo Bills. That shook up the world quite a bit because Buffalo had ascended to the point where people thought that they were the best team in the league. In some cases, I saw them number one in power rankings. They get crushed, just annihilated, demolished by the Miami Dolphins to the tune of what, like 33-6, something in that category. And so Miami's coming into that game with some momentum. There was reason to believe that they would easily cover the tuna hook. They're down at the goal line. I know you were fuming about this as well. And I have only one person that I've talked to that was telling me that I was wrong to criticize McDaniel for not kicking a field goal. A minute 40 to go. Commanders have no timeouts left. They've scored one touchdown the entire ballgame. Your defense is playing pretty well. You just got stuffed on a 3rd and goal from the 1-yard line. The back that you would like to go to in that spot, A-Chain, is out because he's injured. He has to sit out a play. And instead of going for the field goal and taking a 3-point lead there, I'm screaming at the TV, Mike Jones. I know you were too, because you're
Sure.
even more of active and you're more demonstrative about this stuff than I am. You were far from sedate about this. I thought McDaniel should have been fired on the spot for not kicking a field goal there. I don't know what your thoughts were, but I would say it's not even 99 out of 100. It's more like 999 out of 1,000.
Yeah.
Would agree that it was insane. It was irresponsible not to take the lead in that spot and leave the Washington Commanders with a minute 40 to go and no timeouts, needing a field goal to send the game into overtime. And the likelihood of them driving for a touchdown seemed minuscule. How this guy kept his job and then got lucky and ended up winning a ball game, and it turned out to be a cover for me and the others that had the Dolphins, including Frankie G, the aforementioned Frankie G. But how on earth, and you've been all over this, coaches abdicating the possibility of taking field goals, where we saw it with Dan Campbell in Detroit going for 4th downs, 4th and 10s, and all kinds of crazy stuff when he could have put points on the board. I think it's killing a lot of coaches in the National Football League because it really does. Late in the game, you'll see how the dynamic on the scoreboard has changed dramatically because they didn't go for 3 points earlier in the contest.
And here's the thing. You have a line of 2.5 in this game, so it affects the money. So as a gambler, we're looking at this too, like, why aren't they kicking it? So let's take the objectivity out and say you're not the gambler. To me, I look at it like they're using analytics in this case to say, okay, where does the ball going to come out after the kickoff? And the average ball placement is around a 30-yard line, 31-yard line. So they're thinking, okay, if they get it to the opposing team's 40, it's a 57-yard field goal. They have a minute and 40 to go, no timeouts. If they kick that field goal, they return it out, so maybe another 5 seconds runs off the clock. They're at the 35-yard line, 30-yard line. Now they got to go 30 yards. They're thinking that's going to happen, but they're guaranteed it. They figure also that if the guy starts at the 2-yard line, you have a chance to get a safety, you have a chance to do this. Maybe they don't get the ball out to midfield in that minute and a half, and they don't go 50 yards. They have to go further to get it to win the game. That's the only thing I can think of, that the analytics and field position after a kickoff has changed so much that would be what it's caused. But still, how do you put your defense on the field knowing that they now have to prevent that field goal from happening when they could have known a field goal only ties and they get to still play?
Well, and then on top of that, you had McDaniel having to call his timeouts, even though Washington had no timeouts,
right.
Which perpetuated the drive.
There's another thing.
Took a lot of heat off them to get the ball in a field goal range.
Another factor you bring in. So now you get 18 yards on first down. You get another 10 or 12 yards on the next play. So now you're up to the 35. Now you have a 1-yard loss and there's 50 seconds to go, and you use a timeout. And I'm screaming at the TV like, why give the opposing team more plays to get closer to field goal range?
Insane.
Then they get 2 yards on second down when he runs the ball and throws a swing pass to the sideline. And now they use their last timeout. Almost like if I didn't know any better, once they used the timeout, Washington was trying to get them to use the second timeout. Like thinking about the other team in a tie game with a chance to win it. And then the third down play happens when I lose it. They throw a swing pass, and the guy goes 30 yards upfield and gets to the 40-yard line and gets out of bounds. So now there's 30-something seconds to go, 30, 40 seconds to go, and they're at the 40. So now you have a 57-yard makeable field goal now. And what happens? They get conservative and run the ball again and get a yard. And that's it. They don't even run another play, and they go down and kick a 56-yard field goal, and the guy misses it. And he's cut the next day. They cut the only guy that lost his job was the kicker for missing a 56-yard field goal. So to me,
should have been carted out, and he should have been left on the tarmac.
You're watching now games, and notwithstanding, Dan Quinn went for it with the same exact situation with 5 minutes to go in the game on the goal line in a tie game.
Yes.
He goes for it. I mean, it's just, to me, I don't understand it. And it goes back to, I always bring things back to the Giants, unfortunately. Brian Daboll doesn't have a job because they're yelling at him for not going for a touchdown up 7 with 11 minutes to go in the fourth quarter on the half-yard line. Instead, he kicks a field to go up 10, needing a win, figuring the best way to do is make it a 2-score game. Your defense in the first 3.5 quarters is not giving up 10 points, and let alone gives it up at the end. We give up 14 in the last 3 minutes, and we lose, and the guy's out of a job. But you're right. Mike McDaniels was in deep question. He gets a win out of it, which bothers me even more. But to me, it's about the players. How do you make that decision knowing the team can go on the field defensively with a lead and put them on the field knowing they have to protect the tie? That's the mental part of the game that I don't understand.
Well, and the guy who got cut, the field goal kicker, he barely missed that thing from 57 yards. And,
right.
I mean, it's off. At first, when he executed the kick, I thought, wow, that's way right. But when you watch the replay, it just barely missed on the right side. Otherwise, McDaniel is tagged with one of the most horrific losses in Dolphin history, and that would have been the third time this season that you could have made a case that this was one of the most abysmal performances in the history of the franchise. And somehow he ends up with a win. They're celebrating as if they did something great. They got lucky. Mariota throws the pick on the first play of overtime, and they managed to work their way in a field goal position and finally made the kick and covered the 2.5 points for those of us that were desperate.
Right.
But I would have left the coach there. Dennis Allen, they did that when he was coaching the Raiders, and they lost a game in London, and they didn't even let him on the team plane. We saw Lane Kiffin, now the hottest coach in commodity anywhere in college or the pro ranks for that matter. I mean, he's even mentioned for your Giants job. They're escorting his ex-wife around. I think they might have even dug up a couple of his girlfriends from his days at FAU. A couple of those girls that were working at Hooters, and they're showing them all over Baton Rouge and Gainesville, trying to woo him to leave Ole Miss and take one of the jobs that's considered to be more prestigious in the SEC. And yet, this was a guy that had the indignity of having Pat Hayden fire him on the tarmac as he arrived back in Los Angeles. They didn't even let him get on the team bus. So I thought McDaniel should have been in the same situation there. I don't. The idea that you're going to go ahead and start thinking you can get too cute, and the analytics. I know you're one of these guys that looks at all of this numerology. I can't think that. Oh my God, I don't want to have the lead because I have to kick the ball off, and it might come out to the 40. You have to just kick the ball off. You're going to keep them back inside the 30-yard line somehow, which is the more common result, and then. At the worst, you give up a field goal. If they make a long field goal on you, you're in overtime. So it's like they say about passing the football. 2 out of the 3 things that can happen are bad. 2 out of the 3 things that could happen to Mike McDaniel for going for that were bad. And he still could have ended up in overtime if Washington had gone out to the 40-yard line and had 60 yards to go to make a touchdown. So one of the dumbest decisions I've ever seen, and yet it ended up in a victory. So
two questions for the viewers. Love to hear their responses to this. Number one, if the score is 16-13, is McDaniel going for that? If they had previously kicked the field goal, does he take the tie at that point with 1:40 to go and let it happen? Or does he go for the win to go up 4 there knowing they need a touchdown to beat him? That's number one. And number two is, are those same decisions made, Jeff, if both teams are 7-3 instead of 3-7? That's my question. If it's 7-3 and they're playing for a playoff spot, do they put the game out of line, or are they trying to lose the game? Do they not care enough? Do the Commanders know they don't have their quarterback, so they know they're not going anywhere? So it's like, let's just get off the field as way we can. And then vice versa with Miami, the same situation. But I would have liked to have known, does he do it at 16-13 and go for the win at that point instead of kicking for a tie? And if they're 7-3, what's the record? So those are the questions I have for the viewers. Maybe they can respond, and I'll take their feedback.
All right. Just some of the things that happened last week that were especially ponderous. The other is I don't understand how the NFL can go much longer without at least allowing one challenge to pass interference calls. You see in the NBA now where you can challenge a foul call. That was unthinkable several years back when they first started bringing replay into the situation. It was to decide whether a ball was off the one team or the other going out of bounds or
Yeah.
whatever. And then finally they realized, hey, listen, you're going to have to take a look at a couple of these foul calls because
Mhm.
they're very subjective. That pass interference call, and Mike McDaniel is probably the least effective guy. I mean, he just looks out of place when he starts screaming at the referees. I think they do this just deliberately to see him go off and see these crazy antics that he has because nobody has any respect for his argument. But that was probably the most outrageous, egregious, ridiculous pass interference call I've ever seen against a team in a key spot. Where
Yeah.
not only is the ball, I mean, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar couldn't have gotten a fingertip on that ball, and then beyond that, there was no contact
Yeah.
uh,
And
of any sort. And
yeah,
the guy just stumbled, and the ball's 10 feet over his head, and they call
yep.
pass interference, and they let it stick. That was despicable,
Yeah.
and something needs to be done about it.
And Chris Collinsworth, who made the same reaction to the interference call on A.J. Brown later that evening in the Detroit-Philly game, probably because that was a Sunday night game and two better teams. But the more egregious call was the one on Deebo Samuel. That was just the ball was clearly uncatchable. The defender didn't even jeopardize his pathway to the crossing pattern, and the ball wasn't even close. And the thing was, that would have gave them a 3rd and 10 on the 2-yard line. Instead, it gives them a first down, and they go in and get points on the drive. So, yes, and here's the thing about the pass interference call, which I agree to you, but they did it. After the New Orleans Rams championship game, when that big call came out, the next year they put in a challenge of pass interference, and they realized that only 10% of the calls were overturned because they didn't want to make the ref look bad in that situation. You know, it was a judgment call, and they're not going to override the ref. So that was a waste of time anyway. The league wouldn't jeopardize their officiating. So, but we could see that the officiating has been getting worse, and especially when you're betting your money on it. But let's go on the attack here and try to get some money.
And all right, let's get the you got your sledgehammer out. Let's try to break
I
the
do.
piggy bank at least, and we'll get going. So we have 3 games we're going to both select, and I do have Frankie G's picks here. So,
Sure.
and he was very excited to be on the show this week, which makes it even more frustrating that he wasn't able to connect with us here on the program. But I do have his selections here, and he's adamant about a couple of these picks. He's really becoming a much more confident selector of these football games. All right, so let's start with the one college game we had. We have 2 pro games that are going to be part of the community package here. I only picked this because it seemed like a very difficult game to come to any definitive conclusion on. Duke and North Carolina. Duke 5-5 on the season. 2-3 at home and 3-2 on the road. They're on the road against North Carolina. North Carolina was a team that you would want to bet all of your money against in the beginning of the year. I don't think anybody anticipated how horrible they were going to be when they started out the season. They since come back and started to get some semblance of decency, at least in terms of results. They sit there at 2-6 in the ACC, 4-6 overall, and they lost last week to Wake Forest, 28-12. They had beaten Stanford and Syracuse prior to that. As I mentioned, part of the intrigue of picking this game for me was Manny Diaz, much maligned. Is maligned a fair way to put it, or should he just have outright been crucified for the way that he coached at the University of Miami? Maligned implies that it was unjustified criticism, but I think most of it was very much on the money. Gets a job at Duke, does a pretty good job there. This isn't their best season necessarily under Diaz. They were better last year. Sitting there at 500, not necessarily going anywhere. Last couple of games haven't been very favorable for them either, as they lost to number 19 Virginia and lost to UConn, which is going to be in play in one of my selections later on, 37-34. And prior to that, they beat Clemson by a point. So kind of an up and down, topsy-turvy season for Duke. They go on the road and take on North Carolina. What are you seeing in this ball game? And who would you give the coaching edge to in terms of where they're at right now as college coaches?
I would just think the X's and O's, you have to give the edge to North Carolina. But I'm not sure with talent on the field and motivation and the psychological advantages with Duke. But this case is a weird game for me because I kind of think that Duke laid it all on the field last week in a disappointing game. I thought they were the right side. I took them at 3.5. The line went off at 5.5. I really thought them being favored against Virginia and beating Virginia would have left them at the top of the ACC as far as I think it would have been in the top 2 or 3 with a chance for the championship game. I think to lose that game the way they did, be dominated, is a disappointing loss. I don't think that might have a little bit of a lasting effect. And also, I think maybe Bill Belichick can round the dogs in my losing of that total and say, look, we rubbed it in our face last week. Wake Forest stuck it to us. Well, I'm mad. You're mad. Let's rally the troops. Now we got our rival Duke. The UNC Duke rivalry more in basketball than football. But I'm saying I'm going to grab the 6.5 and say that it's an under game, 2 defensive coaches, and Belichick gets lucky and keeps it close. Don't know if they win, but I think they keep it close.
I was sitting on the fence. I can still feel the spokes of the fence. Remember, you used to climb the fence and you had to sit on the top there because it started to wobble a little bit when you're climbing those chain link fences so you could get into some park to play basketball, even though there were no lights and everybody was lining their cars up around the park there to try and give you a little chance to actually see the basket. And you would sit on the fence and just feel the spokes right in your ass sometimes. And that's where I was at with this one, debating back and forth. But I'm with you. I'm thinking 6.5 points at home for North Carolina. They've been showing signs of life. They're not going to be any world beater. I don't know. I mean, Belichick says he's committed to staying at North Carolina, that he's got something going there, and he thinks he's going to get it together. Some people are saying he's a lousy general manager. That was one of the knocks on him after Brady left Tampa Bay, that some of his personnel decisions. We always were baffled when he made these draft picks, and you're saying, who the fuck is that? I mean, how did he come up with this guy? And he would come up with some players that didn't necessarily have all of the publicity of some of the other guys, and actually turned out to be very effective weapons for him and integral parts of the success of the team when he was winning the 6 Super Bowls there. I think maybe he's getting a little bit of a feel for this, and Duke hasn't been overwhelmingly impressive, especially of late. They do have a common opponent that I was taking a look at. And while North Carolina was able to give Virginia a pretty good game, Duke was routed by North Carolina. And so even though they have a winning record on the road, I think that evens out this week. And I do believe that the 6.5 points looks good as a home dog with North Carolina. So I'm on that one. And this is weird because we've had problems in these spots on the show here on Break the Bank when all 3 of us are in agreement, and I do have Frankie G's pick, and he has a very solid North Carolina endorsement, +6 and a hook. So we're all on North Carolina in that college game, getting 6.5 points with Bill Belichick over Manny Diaz and the Duke Blue Devils. Just seems like a spot where taking the points is worth a shot, doesn't it? I don't know that I'm convinced that that's going to be the case. They may well lose by double digits, but I'm thinking getting almost a touchdown. This is a game that figures to teeter back and forth and be pretty close. I'm going to take the 6.5 points like you are and like Frankie G is with North Carolina over Duke. And that would put Belichick at 5-6 overall with a chance to qualify for a bowl game. So that'd be a nice redemption for a guy that was being ridiculed. I mean, lampooned early in the season. Everybody's saying, oh, my God, the old man has lost it completely. Everybody thought he had horrible personnel. Maybe he's coached them up to the point where they're ready to earn a dose of self-respect here and at least be in this game, maybe win it outright. So I'm going to go ahead and take the 6.5 like you and Frankie G with North Carolina. All right, our next community game is in the pros, and this is a tough one to gauge. I have no luck trying to handicap the Kansas City Chiefs. We've been saying that all season long. And the Indianapolis Colts have to be – are they even more of a surprise with your man Daniel Jones than the New England Patriots are behind Drake May and Mike Vrabel? Both of those teams have 9 wins, 9-2. Colts are coming off a bye week. They won that game. It was not an easy one. They won the game in Berlin a couple of weeks back, so they're rested. Chiefs, just when you start to believe in them, they end up throwing in a stinker. They lose to the Broncos, who are offensively challenged, and yet they managed to put enough points up on Spagnuolo and company that the Chiefs weren't able to overcome it, so they suffer a narrow loss there. What are you thinking, Mike Jones, about the Chiefs and the Indianapolis Colts, with the Chiefs at home being favored by 3 and a hook?
So the Chiefs struggling against the run, and that's the Colts specialty, which is something I'd be a little worried about if you're the Chiefs. Also, the bye week, we have the Colts coming off a bye week. And I just think that the interesting story that broke this week is how Andy Reid was getting beat up a little bit for not running the football. And his response was, well, we call runs. It's just not the play that we see on the field, meaning that they think Patrick Mahomes is audibling out of a lot of these running plays to get things done himself, which tells me there might be a little pressing being done by this player. And I watched the game last week and saw a lot of him making poor business decisions. The interception on the goal line, and when it was a 6-6 game before the half, was pretty rough to watch. They had a chance to go up points before the half and didn't take them. And I just see that there's the pressure's getting to them. They're getting, Denver got a lot of pressure on them, and as much as they got these receivers, and they brought Rice back and all that, and they have Travis Kelce and Hollywood Brown and all these players, and they were missing Pacheco. It just seemed like the offense doesn't look like it's in the same continuity that it has been in the past. And the Colts are a tough team. I mean, they're good on both sides of the front, and it's just, to me, it's this: you got a 5-5 Chiefs team. Do the Chiefs end up losing this game and then probably most likely have to press to get to the playoffs? They have a short week and go to Dallas. Coming off this game this week, this is a pretty much a must-win for Kansas City. Colts get tested on the road. They had a good win against the Chargers on the road. Their other road win of the year was at Tennessee, which is, the worst record in football. So I don't think they've been great on the road this year. So I'm going to go to the well one more time here. I don't love the game, but I got to take Mahomes and let the Chiefs rally. All points tell me to take the dog in this spot, but he's got me and made me money over the past, and you got to think he's still the best in the game. I'm going to lay the 3.5 for Kansas City reluctantly.
It always amazes me. We talk about scouting, and especially comes into play around the draft, and you're asking yourself, well, why certain teams fall in love with a player, and I guess the ultimate one would be, a recent example would be Anthony Richardson, where the Colts, ironically, who we were talking about, went up in the draft to select Anthony Richardson, and you're asking yourself, what were these scouts watching? He was an athletic talent, a great kid. You would imagine his interviews were stellar because he really is a well-grounded individual. He even took his demotion very well. You haven't heard this guy squirming around and talking negatively about the situation that he's in. Maybe he's just satisfied. He doesn't strike me as a guy that's satisfied about having the money. But what were they watching? The guy was the most inaccurate passer that you'd ever seen in the history of college football, or so it seemed. And you're wondering, well, why would professional scouts think that this could be easily corrected? And sure enough, what's his biggest problem once he turned pro? He's a completely inaccurate passer. Now, we did see Josh Allen get better in that category, but he's capable of scattering it once in a while. He's gotten a lot better, but he's been in the league for a while now. Richardson hasn't had time to establish that. But the thing is that you have to believe what you see sometimes. And I'm starting to wonder if maybe we're just ignoring the obvious, and maybe the Chiefs aren't as good as we think they are, because they're sitting there at 5-5, and as you said, a desperate situation here. They lose this ball game, that they're really in a lot of trouble for even making the postseason. And that's one of the reasons I think I agree with you that the incentive is there for them. They're also much better at home than they are on the road this season. 4-1 at home, 1-4 on the road. I don't think this is against the spread, but at least outright, they have won 15 straight games at home when they've been favored at home. We also know about the old adage about never bet against Patrick Mahomes when you're getting points. In this case, you're giving 3.5. I'm thinking that Spagnuolo will find a way to. Can you stop Jonathan Taylor? I doubt it. Can you slow him up? Maybe so. We did see, I don't even know if you can use this phraseology anymore, a little chink in the armor there with Daniel Jones when he had that one horrible game a couple of games back. They were life and death to win this game in Berlin a couple of weeks ago. So I'm thinking the Chiefs in this spot just through experience and the fact that I believe their season is very much on the line in every game they play the rest of the way. I'm going to go ahead and lay the 3.5 with the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm with you. We may learn and live to regret that, but I think they're going to come through in this spot. I don't think 3.5 is too much to lay at Arrowhead. And the Colts, two things can happen here. They're either going to suffer a little bit from being on ice or coming out of the bye week. Maybe they come out here on fire. I just believe that the Chiefs, with their experience and their championship caliber players, find a way to win this ball game, and they find a way to win it by 3.5. Although it could be one of those dogfight games where you win, but don't cover the spread. That's very possible. I'm going to go ahead and lay the 3.5 with the Chiefs in this one. Our man Frankie G, in stark contrast to our beliefs, Mike Jones, sees the Colts winning this game outright, 27-23. So he's taking the Colts plus 3.5. But a tough game to call, tough to go against Patrick Mahomes. They did play in some difficult luck there against the Denver Broncos. Had some opportunities. They ended up with a loss. That was a particularly brutal loss for them at the time when they were starting to maybe gather momentum and convince you that they were back on track. I think they do get back on track this week, and they cover the 3 and a hook. All right, our other community game is in the pros as well. And it's another tough one because you have one team that's radically on the ascent and now among the darlings of the league and maybe even a possible Super Bowl contender. And another team that you thought was going to be a Super Bowl contender, but all of a sudden they've lost a couple in a row. The Rams and the Buccaneers. The Rams are giving 6.5 points here. Bucks getting 6.5 on the road against the Los Angeles Rams. What are your thoughts? And do you see Stafford and company coming through in this one?
Yeah, this is an interesting game. So the line's 6.5, and I think we're making a lot of that loss last week in Buffalo. They get out of the cold. They go to a neutral zone place with a roof, so it's kind of pretty much going to be temperature friendly for Tampa. Getting 6.5 as an underdog, I kind of like Tampa in the spot. But here's the problem, Jeff. Those skill people are missing. Godwin, Evans, Bucky Irvin. They just really can't make that up. Although Tucker had a really good game and Jig was good. Yeah, just so hard to lay the 6.5. And then last week I got lucky with Seattle getting the 3. I have no business being in a game with 4 turnovers with Sam Darnold and coming off a physical game against Seattle. I'm going to roll the dice with the dog here and take a shot with Baker one more time. Had a big win to turn his career around as a Ram in that stadium when he came back after losing the Raiders and scored 17 points in the final minutes to win a game. When he was with the Rams, everybody made a big stink about that. I just think 6.5 is a little bit much here in this spot, and all things point toward the Rams in their season. They're up with Liv, but I think they were lucky to get out of there last week, and I think they'll be lucky to cover the spread this week. So I'm going with the Tampa Bay Bucks plus the 6.5.
Bitterly disappointed last week. I mean, as much as and I got talked into it on the show. I think both you and Frankie G influenced me into taking the Bucks last week. I'm not blaming you. I mean, it was my selection. You got to man up, and you win, you lose, you lose. But I thought maybe there was an outside chance at a backdoor cover because they were getting a lot of points last week, and they were down 42-34, something like that. No, it was 44-34, and they had a chance maybe to score at the end.
44-32.
Get that backdoor cover.
I think the end result was the worst score, right? 12 was the most they were down the whole game, and it was the final score. They were winning. They gave up that screen at halftime, which really was mind-blowing. You don't see a Todd Bowles team do where they're throwing a swing pass just to get a few yards and get in long field goal range. And Johnson breaks it 5 yards for a touchdown. It blew me away when I saw that play, and then makes it you're down 4 instead of going in up 3, getting 5.5. You feel like you'd be in good shape with more than a score. But yeah, it didn't hold up for us. But yeah, that was a tough one.
I don't know that Baker Mayfield can do everything. I mean, you're thinking about Gisele Bundchen in this spot, where she was in the elevator there, and I guess Wes Welker had dropped a pass, and she was crying to the reporters, well, my Tommy can't do everything. He can't throw the ball, catch the ball, and run the ball. And that's what they're asking Baker Mayfield to do at this point. And I think it's led to this recent decline in the Buccaneers, who have lost a couple in a row. Meanwhile, I'm watching the Rams. They're partying. Sean McVay is reestablishing himself as one of the sharpest coaches in the league. Matthew Stafford, who he didn't even know if he was going to make it into the season. There was a lot of questions about his status, and they had the bum shoulder and a back injury or whatever it was, and kept him out of all of the preseason. But he's come out and acquitted himself very well. And of late, he just looks like he's having a blast. As much fun as Baker Mayfield was having early in the year, carrying the Buccaneers to the position that they were in, when it looked like they were possible Super Bowl contenders. Last couple of weeks, I believe it's caught up with him a little bit, and he's being asked to do too much. And I don't know that he can carry them without Godwin and without Evans and some of their other key players. So being on the road, it is a lot of points. You're talking about a touchdown differential, but I think the Rams are just hitting their stride at a good point time in the season to have that happen. They look like they're having an awful lot of fun, where it looks like the Buccaneers are struggling to find themselves again a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and lay the 6.5 with the Los Angeles Rams at home and say that the Buccaneers will continue a little bit of a slide, and the Rams will continue to prosper and maybe even emerge with even more momentum after this ball game than they had going in. I'm going to lay the 6.5 with the Rams, and I believe Frankie G is with us on that one. He says that the Rams laying 6.5 smoke the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to the tune. They even named a score here, 34-20. So he sees a 2-touchdown victory. We only have to cover one. And I'm going to go ahead and lay the 6.5 points there. All right, let's get into a couple of open selections here. I don't know exactly where you want to go. I mean, there's some really strange games, and I'm not thinking that you're going to go with your G-men here. You got the Lions laying 10.5. You have a couple of other double-digit games. Ravens and the Jets is
Yeah,
a 13.5 spread. Seahawks and Titans 13.5. Staying away from all of that. You have some monster spreads with some of the top teams in college football. Mike Jones, I'm giving you a free pick. Where are you going?
I'm going to Norman. I was really impressed with watching Oklahoma take on Alabama last week. Mateer looks like he's getting over that hand injury a little bit more. Their defense looks good. Their best player was out, and they pulled off a big win. They're only laying 7.5 at home to Missouri. I think in that game, it was a rivalry game in the Big 12 years ago. I like what Oklahoma's doing. I've always been a fan of Brett Venable. It took them a little while to get this team going, but I really like what they're doing. They're really good on defense. Missouri's on their third quarterback. I know they're very competitive and they're good defensively, so I see a low-scoring game, but I think they just might wear them down like they did, and I covered a 7.5. So I'm on Oklahoma for the second straight week.
Oh, Oklahoma. Boy, that surprised me a little bit. I didn't expect them to beat Alabama, and congratulations to them and to you for having the boldness and the courage to go ahead and take the Oklahoma Sooners, who I thought maybe were in a little bit of decline themselves. Alabama was coming on, looked to be in a beautiful spot. Nick Saban would have been crying about the officiating, but credit to DeBoer. He just congratulated Oklahoma on a real good ball game. Alabama had their chances. Interesting that that Oklahoma would turn things into a situation where, you can easily believe that they might use that as a springboard and have some success. Frankie G's got, you know how he likes to do this? He likes to take his two free selections and put them into one game, combine them like with a parlay with an over-under
Nice.
and a side. So he loves the Eagles in their ball game against the Dallas Cowboys. I believe the line's only like 3 points. He sees the Eagles winning this thing by
Very nice.
9.
Yep.
He's got a final there of 32-23 and the over of 47 and a hook. He sees a lot of scoring going on in this game, even though the Eagles haven't been putting up a lot of points. And that was another game where you saw Dan Campbell go for, I think, 4 fourth down plays that all failed. And I mean, how insane is you can go to the well, a couple of times too often, no? It's like you when you were playing tennis and you used to hit drop shot after drop shot, and finally the guy would just come to the net and start smashing the ball and putting you back on your heels. So Frankie G's logic is that Dallas's defense is Swiss cheese, and they have 4 new starters. They're going to give up a lot of points, 32-23. He sees that one. So his 2 free selections are Eagles to cover the point spread and the over of 47.5 in that game. I'm going to go first one to the college ranks as well. Kind of a strange one here, Mike Jones, because we were surprised when the community selections were made a couple of weeks ago by one A.J. Johnson, and he threw in the Florida Atlantic game, which I lost, thinking that the game was easily going to go over. It did not, although you gave me credit for a push on that one because the line dropped a little bit. I was looking at an over-under of like 64. I think I went off at like 61, and we were able to at least get a push on that. It might have been 62. UConn has been overlooked. I think Jim Mora Jr. doing a pretty good job with UConn this year, no?
Yes.
Not a team that gets mentioned a lot in discussions on national sports talk shows, but they've been rolling ever since they lost a game to Rice, and they've beaten Duke, UAB, and Air Force. UConn. So that win over Duke here, we were talking about Duke possibly winning on the road against North Carolina, and UConn's already laid a loss on them. And they're laying 7.5 here on the road. FAU doesn't get any pressure on anybody at the quarterback spot. They don't have any pass rush. And an odd stat on third down situations, they're giving up like 9 yards a play when they're facing teams in an average of 9 yards on third down situations. That stat seemed startling. Almost as if I may have to go back and check it because it seems almost impossible. So I'm thinking if they don't get any pressure on the quarterback and they're going to be so vulnerable on third down, they're probably going to lose this ball game by double digits. And I'm going to go ahead and lay 7.5 with UConn on the road in Boca Raton, Florida, against the Florida Atlantic Owls. Of course, we have a big fan base here in Bleacher Brothers for Florida Atlantic, so it's probably not a very popular pick with the legions of fans that we have logging on and watching the show here today. But I think UConn's been underrated. I really admire the fact that Mora Jr. has stuck to it and the progress they made. I mean, this was a doormat team for so many years, and he comes into the program not exactly off the best set of credentials. I mean, you don't take that kind of job if you're rolling. Kind of like when Lane Kiffin took the FAU job after they had a bunch of 3-win seasons and managed to parlay that into tremendous success. I'm going to take a shot here with UConn, the Huskies, against Florida Atlantic University and lay 7.5. All right, you have one more for us, Mike Jones, of your free selections.
I'm going to my boys. Okay, so Jackson Dart is in practice today. So there's a real possibility he plays. So it hasn't been announced yet. It hasn't been announced yet, but if we have Jameis Winston in this game, going out to Detroit, Detroit's laying 10, and here's the question mark. Dan Campbell, off a loss, is 13-0 against the number in his last 13. So it tells me after that tough decision that he could blame on himself for all those fourth down calls that he's going to put his team into a position that should be pretty, okay. Giants have been competitive all year. The biggest problem the Giants had going into the season was what was Russell Wilson going to provide as a starting quarterback? What was going to happen in the development of Jackson Dart? And our offensive line stinks. Well, we're in the top 10 in Pro Football Focus in offensive line play. Our line has not been the issue. It's been our defensive line that everybody liked. That's 19th in sacks. And other than Brian Burns, there's 13 of them out of the 23 we have. And last year, when no one talked about our defensive front, we had 29 sacks in the first 6 weeks. So we're not getting pressure to close out games. I don't think this will be a chance this will be close. I don't know how we're going to cover St. Brown and Jameis Williams with our poor defensive secondary we have. I will be surprised if Jameis starts this game and it's close. So I look for Detroit. If Dart plays, I'll give you I'll go to Monday night and throw in Carolina. So the bet is if Dart doesn't play, I like Detroit. If not, I'll throw the Panthers in as a whole big dog +7 on the road against San Francisco Monday night. But I don't know that they're going to put Jackson Dart in this position coming out. I don't know that we should rush him back. Maybe save him for Monday Night Football in New England when everybody gets a chance to see him the following week. Give him an extra day, 8 days to prepare, and I take it. But if Jameis goes, I don't know that we have a chance against Detroit in Detroit.
All right, I'm going to take a shot here with one of the teams I've also struggled with, although they've been putting up a lot of points lately. And I'm going to take the Jacksonville Jaguars in their game against the Arizona Cardinals. They had that. You couldn't blow a game any worse than they did a couple of weeks back when they were up 19-0 on the Houston Texans. They end up losing the game and actually losing it by a fairly wide margin after a late score. Horrendous, but they come back and they hammer the Chargers, who were starting to come on. So this is a team that's capable of scoring points. We've been waiting for Herbert to finally distinguish, not Herbert, but we've been waiting for Trevor Lawrence to distinguish himself as a consistently solid quarterback in the NFL. I think he's starting to show signs of life. Now, Jacoby Brissett, you can't knock him, although my original thinking on this was it's time. Sometimes you'll see a guy who's a career backup come in and he lights it up for a couple of weeks and then he reverts back to all of the things that made him a backup to begin with. I would maybe see this with Mariota as the Commanders weren't able to get over the hump there and only put up an anemic number of points against the Dolphins last week. Brissett, I don't know that you can really blame him for what happened against San Francisco. You can blame the defense, of course. They gave up enough points to force him to throw, 57 passes in that game?
Yep, 47, 57, some percentage, yep. Most completions in the history of a regular season game.
Holy Johnny Unitas. 47 out of 57 for Jacoby Brissett, but they still lose the game by 20 points. Mm-hmm. So I think that exposes some of the holes that there are. The Arizona Cardinals, never a great team. They obviously made a mistake there. Kyler Murray didn't pan out to the extent that they would have liked him to. They gave him all that money. They've had to play the backup because of his injuries. Jacksonville looking like they do have some possibilities. They've been up and down this season. Just when you start to believe in them, they throw in a stinker. I don't think they're going to do it this week. I think they're going to go ahead and quit themselves very well. And I'm going to go ahead and lay the, I think it's 3 points with Jacksonville against Arizona on the road and figure that it's catching up with Arizona. They can't keep playing the sieve-like defense and expect Jacoby Brissett to bail them out. And the chances of him going 47 or 57 again, since it's never happened before in NFL history, I doubt that's going to happen again in recent times. All right, we have some thoughts on some other things, though. We're going to take a short break here. Steve Luker at the controls. And we'll come back. Mike Jones and I will come back and wrap things up with a few other thoughts on some other sports in just a moment.
Hi, I'm Joe B., founder of Joe B's 100% natural free-range bee pollen, and I want you to feel great. $99 gets you a 6-month supply, and this 7th month is absolutely free. The shipping is free. Joe B's is bee pollen, simple natural nutrition loaded with natural vitamins and minerals. There's only one place to get Joe B's, and that's from me, Joe B. What are you waiting for? You will love my Joe B's, and if you don't, then I will gladly refund your money, no questions asked.
Welcome to Rebet, the first of its kind free-to-play social sports book.
Let's put some money on the game tonight.
I can't. I'm broke.
We'll just use the coins.
Coins?
Use Rebet coins for a free and fun betting experience while gaining in-app status. And for the betting enthusiasts, use our sweepstakes model to redeem real money rewards with Rebet Cash.
So New York to cover the spread?
They're -10, bro. It's a lock.
For those who might not get the lingo, use our easy-to-read lines to bet like a pro. And for those with a competitive friendship,
Dallas is going to crush Philly tonight.
Man, put your money where your mouth is.
All right, bet.
compete directly against your friends through our peer-to-peer betting feature. Bet on over 60 major sports leagues with Rebet's dynamic social sportsbook, featuring more than 3,000 diverse betting markets for an unparalleled experience. And with our social feed, you can share your bets with your friends. See a pick you like? Double down with a click of a button. This is Rebet. Welcome to sports betting made social. Legal in 47 states.
Yeah, a little bonus time there with Joe B, man. That is a great product, by the way. And he's one of these guys. He's a man of his word. I mean, it's natural bee pollen. But we could both benefit by taking it. I started taking it a while back. And it just makes a big difference in the overall way you feel. I just saw a friend of mine. I went out to the Tipperary pub last night to catch some music. It was great, by the way. We missed you. I should have invited you to come along because I had a great player there. And I saw our friend Mike, who joined us the last time you were there. And he needs some Joe B's, man. I mean, he was starting to show some wear and tear. And Deck 84, if you're a local viewer here, if you're in South Florida, Deck 84 at Delray Beach, they're celebrating their 15th anniversary. They're absolutely just doing great. And even in the tough times that a lot of restaurants experienced over the summer, Bert Rappaport, one of the great restaurateurs in the history of South Florida, he had altogether 30 restaurants that he's opened here in South Florida. He's been doing it for 50 years. And we had some stuff there that was just absolutely fantastic. What a great atmosphere. Now that the weather's got to the point where you can be outside all day long, and it's especially beautiful in the late afternoon. My God, what great food. We're going to have to go there and have lunch one day or some kind of meeting. Crab cake, I didn't even know I thought it was some kind of rice ball thing. It came in like a ball, a fried ball. And it was one of those things where when you slice it open, literally, I mean, they're just loaded with crab meat. It was so delicious, unbelievable. They do a great job there. So Deck 84, definitely a spot that you should have as a destination of choice if you're in the Delray Beach area. A lot of great restaurants there, but Deck 84 ranks up there with all of them, and it's right there on the water. So a good spot to go to. All right, one of the things I love about you, Mike, is you'll bet on anything, man. If you turn the light on in the kitchen, you'll bet on it's the proverbial thing. You'll bet on which roach is going to make it to the sink first. But you've been having some success betting pucks. What's the story on that? And you included a winner earlier this week on one of our other shows where you had the Blackhawks and they annihilate the Calgary Flames. Are you getting this information from like the ghost of Gump Worsley or something? How are you figuring these
No,
things out? What is the deal with figuring hockey?
the ghost of Stan Mikita. No, actually, I'm looking at some teams that just don't you didn't bet for the last couple of years, and there's one tonight that I'm interested in. Why is the Anaheim Ducks laying 170 to those Boston Bruins? Boston going out west, tough time to go out west. The Ducks are playing good hockey. They got a vibe in the arena. I like Anaheim. I'm going to lay the 170 tonight and go with the Ducks. These up and coming teams. Sharks last night pull one out for you. You know, the Blackhawks were good. Yeah, I just picking out one game. You got the Edmonton, who struggled a little bit going into Washington, the TNT game tonight. The late game was very interesting. Carolina, Minnesota. I like Kaprizov of Minnesota. Probably get them as a little live dog tonight if you're looking to find a dog to match up. Carolina's really good, not too great on the road, but kind of like a little bit of see the Minnesota Wild a little bit. But my best bet tonight would be the Anaheim Ducks.
Whacking, man, with the Anaheim Ducks. No, you've been amazing with the pucks. Any kind of read on what's going on in the NBA? Anything that you're seeing there?
Very interesting game tonight. Jimmy Butler returns to Miami, but he's questionable. Yes. But also we got Steph Curry not playing. Draymond Green's questionable. If you go through the list, I think there's 5 guys that are not playing for Golden State. But the line is the Heat -10, and they may get Bam Adebayo back. So kind of a little not a real easy shake to go look at that and see. Golden State's going to have some guys that can play that are going to get more minutes. We did this the other night. I remember when the Heat kind of got a little walkthrough when Cleveland didn't play all their players, and we were talking about this, and I got you a little worried about that bet. And sure enough, Cleveland wins going away. So you never know when all these guys don't play. But not having Steph Curry, if Jimmy Butler doesn't play, Draymond Green doesn't play, Miami will stay a little bit focused there, and I think they probably win the game and might even cover the 10. So that was one game I looked at. Also, the Toronto Raptors playing better ball. Atlanta Hawks playing better. Phoenix Suns last night. I gave out the Phoenix Suns over Portland. They're playing much better. Suffered a bad 20-point fourth quarter loss to Atlanta on Sunday. Bounced back on Tuesday and get a win up in Portland. A game that was on Peacock on the West Coast, NBC West Coast game. So they got a little West
Coast vision on it. There you go.
Teams that just haven't been bet a lot and not really the prominent teams. The other game tonight, Oklahoma City Thunder going to lay some huge number, I think, as they play again tonight. So Thunder have been great against the numbers, so don't hesitate to grab OKC if you see that their players are. And they're so deep on their bench. If a couple of guys are out, as long as SGA's not out, you're probably going to get a better number there and still can bet them because they're so deep and so good.
Any kind of grip on college basketball so far?
Yeah, watched the doubleheader last night a little bit. Michigan State is a dog, a 5.5-point dog. It's a big win over Kentucky, Madison Square Garden. And Duke Peterson, the All-American, the best player, number 1 pick of the draft, was missing from Kansas. Kansas hangs in there, has a lead at halftime, but Duke came in and got the cover by half a point last night, win going away by 11. Second time they've done that, by the way. They were down against Texas first half and came back covered. So maybe you want Duke for the second half play as you're watching and digging through the college basketball season. We're going to get further on in college when we get to Maui and start getting through the Christmas time, and then we'll be paying attention, and we'll get there as the conference games start and we get closer to tournament time.
The buzz seems to be don't sleep on the Zags. Gonzaga, maybe underrated going into the season. Came back with a good tandem up front for returning guys and added in some talent. Ranked in the 20 to 25 range before the season started, and starting to come on and some impressive victories. So might be a team that you can cash on before the rest of the world catches up with them. Gonzaga playing some really good basketball, and the ACC has been prospering as bad as they are in football. They've been dynamite, as you might expect. I mean, but they've come back and have established any number of teams that all look like they're loaded with promise this year in the ACC. So even my Syracuse Orange are undefeated, although they played probably the weakest schedule. We're notorious for that early in the season under Jimmy B, but now that he's gone, they haven't broken with that tradition where they consider Colgate to be a tough game to start out the year before they get into the conference. All right, Mike, always a pleasure. Good luck with all your plays. Sorry that we weren't able to bring you. Frankie G said there was a Verizon outage in his home area there of Philadelphia. And, he's in New Jersey, right? Frankie G. And but he's a world traveler, so wherever he happened to be, they had a Verizon outage, and he wasn't able to make it on the show. I don't know if anybody bet that he would be a late scratch, but if you did, you got your money back, which is always better than losing, right? It beats tearing up the ticket. So we hope you guys have a great weekend and a lot of success with your football plays. For Mike Jones, Steve Luker, who does an outstanding job producing the program for us, and of course AJ Johnson and all the people at Bleacher Brothers. It's a pleasure being part of the programs that they have on the air. Always a big Wednesday lineup. For Mike Jones, I'm Jeff DeForest. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you on next week's edition of Break the Bank.